Today, the big teams of the world can collect titles in peace. They can chase their dreams without fearing that blue shadow. Because for now, the phoenix still lies beneath the ashes. But ashes have always been the birthplace of rebirth. And when this phoenix one day rises again from these very ashes, it will take sleep away from the eyes of the contenders. Not with an ordinary return, but with a comeback that will once again force the world to show respect. Once, the world spoke in the language of Italian football. Every time the Azzurri walked onto the pitch, history held its breath for a moment, but history is merciless. It buries its champions and keeps walking. Italy grew tired. Generations came and went, and the blue flag faded away slowly, like an old wound that no one dares to touch anymore. Today, the World Cup is played without us. Without the anthem that once turned stadiums into cathedrals, sung with clenched fists and tears in the players' eyes. Now there is only silence, a cold, heavy silence. Without the roar of Forza Azzurri that once burst from millions of chests and forced the world to listen, now only echoes remain. Without that old fire, without that pride. And here we stand, among the ruins of an empire the world no longer even looks at. The crisis of talent production. For decades, Italy was a factory that produced legends. This country didn't just create good players, it created players who could change the course of games and even history in the biggest moments. But that factory has shut down. In modern football, Italy no longer produces players at a truly decisive, era-defining level. The problem is no longer just the lack of a clinical striker or a creative midfielder. The issue runs much deeper. Across almost every position on the pitch, Italy currently lacks players with genuine, world-class quality and impact. In attack, there are no true elite finishers. Players who can stay calm and clinical in the most important moments against top goalkeepers have become extremely rare. The ruthless goal-scoring instinct that once defined Italian forwards has largely disappeared. In midfield, there are almost no controlling, game-dictating players at the highest level. Football today demands midfielders who can control tempo, create space, and take responsibility in difficult moments. The current generation of Italian midfielders largely lacks this authority and composure. In defense, Italy no longer produces strong, intelligent, and dominant centre-backs. The back line that was once one of the most feared and organized in the world has become fragile and lacking in authority. Modern defenders are expected to be physically strong, tactically sharp, and comfortable with the ball. But very few Italian defenders today excel in all of these areas. Even in goal, after the long era of Buffon, Italy has struggled for years to find a truly world-class goalkeeper. This weakness in the most important position on the pitch has repeatedly been exposed in big matches and decisive moments. This lack of quality across all lines may not be obvious in friendlies or in domestic league games, but when it comes to major tournaments and early eliminations, it suddenly becomes painfully clear. The last generation that could truly be considered world-class and decisive belonged to the 2006 World Cup era. Since then, Italy has produced acceptable players, but very few who can actually change games at the highest level when it matters most. And in today's football, being acceptable is no longer enough. The structural decline of Italian football. Italy's national team did not collapse on its own. It was gradually weakened and dismantled by the very system that had once built it into a powerhouse. For decades, Serie A was the toughest, most tactical, and most respected league in the world. Success in Italy almost guaranteed respect across Europe, but this dominance was built on fragile foundations. The turning point came with the Calciopoli scandal. It was not merely an administrative violation, it was a deep wound to the credibility and trust in Italian football. Instead of addressing the root problems, the system entered a long period of instability, poor governance, and denial. Clubs became financially weaker. Many owners either lacked the resources or the willingness to invest properly. While clubs across Europe were building modern, multi-purpose stadiums, almost no major club in Serie A owned a modern stadium of its own. Juventus was the only big club to successfully build its own modern stadium, the Allianz Stadium. Atalanta and Udinese also have significant control over their grounds, but most top clubs, including Inter, Milan, Roma, Lazio, and Napoli, still play in outdated municipal stadiums. These old venues offer poor facilities and generate very low matchday revenue. At the same time, Serie A's television broadcasting deals were poorly negotiated and managed compared to the Premier League and Bundesliga. Low production quality and weak bargaining power kept broadcasting income significantly lower than in other major leagues. Sponsorship and commercial revenue also suffered. The global appeal of Serie A and its biggest clubs declined, resulting in weaker sponsorship deals. As a result, Serie A gradually transformed from a destination league into a stepping stone league. Top players no longer stayed in Italy during their prime years. As soon as a better offer came from England, Spain, or Germany, they left. Italian clubs, instead of developing and retaining talent, increasingly relied on selling players just to survive financially. This created a hidden but devastating problem. The national team was no longer built on the foundation of a strong domestic league. When the base weakens, the national team inevitably follows, not immediately, but gradually and dangerously. Italy did not only lose its best players, it lost the environment that once developed those players, pushed them to their limits, and turned them into world-class talents. When that environment collapses, even the most gifted individuals struggle to form a consistently strong national team on their own. Inability to adapt to modern football. Football evolved, but for a long time, Italy refused to move with it. While the modern game became faster, more intense, and physically demanding, built around organized pressing, quick transitions, and data-driven decisions, Italy continued to rely on its traditional identity: compact defending, tactical control, and slow build-up play. This approach had worked for years, but it was no longer enough. Countries like Germany, Spain, and later England fundamentally rebuilt their structures, philosophies, and even their football culture to match the new reality. They modernized their training methods, talent development systems, and tactical approaches. Italy, however, remained hesitant and slow to adapt. The real problem was not that Italy failed to modernize. The deeper issue was that when it finally attempted to change, it never fully let go of the past nor fully embraced the new. The result was a confused, hybrid identity, neither traditional enough to maintain its old strengths, nor modern enough to compete with the best teams in the world. In elite football, being caught between two worlds is often worse than being clearly behind, because you no longer have the full power of your old identity, nor the tools of the new one. For years, Italian coaches and administrators searched for a balance they never truly found. By the time this incomplete and delayed adaptation finally began, the gap with the world's top teams had already become significant. Modern football now demanded not only speed and physical intensity, but also flexible defensive structures, coordinated pressing, and data-informed decision-making, areas in which Italy had not invested seriously or systematically. As a result, in major tournaments, Italy found itself behind not only in terms of individual player quality, but also in its understanding of the game and its ability to respond to modern tactical demands. And in decisive moments, this gap proved costly. Weak management and lack of long-term planning. Behind every successful football nation lies a long-term vision and a stable system that carries forward from one generation to the next. Italy, however, lacked such continuity for years. Instead of following a clear and consistent project, major decisions were often driven by short-term results, media pressure, and frequent changes in federation leadership. Every time results turned poor, the coach was replaced, and the structure was rebuilt from scratch, without any of these changes becoming deep or sustainable. Even at the level of big Serie A clubs, signs of this instability and closed mindset are clearly visible. Coaches such as Spalletti, Allegri, Gasperini, Pioli, Conte, and Sarri have been rotating between the same few big clubs for years. This closed loop has not brought innovation. It has simply kept Italian football trapped in old and repetitive patterns. Furthermore, even when young Italian coaches reach the top level, a serious question remains. Can they truly reach the stature of Italy's great historical coaches, such as Capello, Lippi, and Ancelotti? Or are they still stuck in outdated patterns of Italian football? This generational gap in coaching is another clear sign of weak long-term planning in Italian football. The youth system also suffered from severe fragmentation. There was no unified identity or philosophy connecting the academies to the national team. While countries like Germany rebuilt their entire football structure after failure and defined a clear long-term path, Italy never managed to establish such stability. Italy did not fall because of one wrong decision. It fell because no decision was stable or long-term enough to build a future. Italy collapsed under the weight of 4 crises happening at the same time. These factors were never separate. They fed into each other and created a vicious cycle. When the system of producing top players weakened, the domestic league lost its power. When the league grew weaker, the national team no longer had a solid foundation to rely on. When modern football changed its rules, Italy was still searching for its identity. And when management lacked stability, none of these problems were ever addressed at their roots. And now, in this vast silence, the Azzurri only live in old photographs and in the memories of their fans. But football history never buries anyone forever. Today, the big teams of the world can collect titles in peace. They can chase their dreams without fearing that blue shadow. Because for now, the phoenix still lies beneath the ashes. But ashes have always been the birthplace of rebirth. And when this phoenix one day rises again, it will take sleep away from the eyes of the contenders. Not with an ordinary return, but with a comeback that will once again force the world to show respect. Because Italy is not just a team. Italy is the memory of football. And memory never stays silent forever.